You know, some of us didn't just drink to escape our own pain. We drank to escape other people's pain. Pain that we had absorbed without even realizing it. So if you've ever wondered whether you feel too much or that you somehow take on emotions that aren't yours, if that's ever left you feeling drained, anxious, overwhelmed, and reaching for a drink just to shut it all down, this video is for you. So I want to talk about attunement today. Attunement is the ability to sense what other people are feeling, even if they don't say a word. It's how we connect and is how we make others feel seen, safe, understood. But for some of us, this skill didn't come from mindfulness or, I don't know, some kind of compassion training. It came from survival. Maybe you grew up in an environment where you had to be constantly aware of someone else's mood. Maybe love, safety, peace depended on how well you could anticipate somebody else's emotional state. So maybe you became hyper-attuned, not just tuned in, but almost merged with other people's emotions. So that was me. I didn't choose it, I just became it. Without trying, I learned to feel what other people were feeling, sometimes even before they knew what they were feeling. And although that can sound almost like a superpower, and in some ways it kind of is, it comes with a problem. So the problem with being overly attuned to other people is that it often means that you're disconnected from yourself. When you're always focused on reading the room, keeping the peace, and managing the emotional weather on the outside, you stop noticing what's going on the inside. And when you do feel something of your own, it can feel overwhelming, sticky, heavy, like it doesn't move. That's what I've come to understand as poor emotional fluidity. So what do I mean by poor emotional fluidity? It's not that you don't feel things, it's that when you do, the feelings get stuck. You either push them down, overthink them, or try to control them, but you don't really let them pass through, and that creates all kinds of issues like anxiety, burnout, sleep problems, even a kind of emotional paralysis in relationships. So what do we do when we don't know how to feel what we feel? It creates a discomfort, and then we reach for something that promises to make it stop. Now, for many of us, that's where alcohol comes in. When you're hyper-attuned and emotionally stuck, alcohol can feel like the perfect solution. It softens the edges, it shuts off the noise, creates space, or at least the illusion of space. And for a while, it works, but it's not real peace and it's not real relief. And it definitely doesn't allow for healthy emotional fluidity. So it's more like a kind of a pause button that you're going to pay for later. And most of the time we do pay some kind of a price for that. And over time, the more you drink to control that kind of emotional overwhelm, the less able you are to feel anything clearly. Emotions don't just go away, they wait. They can accumulate in your body, they can distort, they show up in other places, and they often will surface at times in your life when it can be most unhelpful for that to happen. It can be embarrassing, inappropriate, uncalled for, which only throws more fuel on the fire for future emotional distress. And that's creating a vicious cycle that many of us can be quite familiar with. So using the in the third person framework, we can see exactly how the drinker persona survives with all of this. The drinker numbs, not so that they don't feel anything, but it's really more to avoid feeling everything. So the observer, the third person, they're the one, that's you when you've woken up and you can sort of sense that something's not quite right. You know that something just isn't quite working anymore. And then there's the non-drinker. From this viewpoint, you can learn a new way to be, one where emotions aren't your enemy and you don't have to carry what isn't yours. So in sobriety, I've started to see that I never lacked emotional strength. I just never learned emotional movement. I was strong enough to feel everything, but I wasn't taught how to let go of any of it. And that for me would lead to drinking, and a loop where the drinking would lead to poor emotional health, poor kind of communication, and then that would lead to more awkwardness that would lead to more drinking, and round you go. So I'm now learning to sit with my own feelings without getting stuck. I do notice other people's emotions, but I can do it without fully absorbing them. I've learned how to let emotions flow through me or pass by like weather and not stay lodged inside or to be pushed down. And that is true freedom. The freedom that we all look for in alcohol is the freedom to escape. But in sobriety, we can create that freedom. We can create a freedom to stay, because it's no longer uncomfortable to do so. So if you've always felt too much, if you've struggled to understand your own emotions, if drinking has felt like the only thing that made things manageable, you might have just been too attuned for your own good and never taught what to do with all of that emotion. So learning about emotional fluidity would be really helpful, and understanding that this stuff isn't your fault. This happens to many of us, but it is something that you can work on. Sobriety doesn't just give you clarity, it gives you movement. It gives you yourself without the emotional weight of the whole world on your shoulders. And that's where real connection begins. Connection to yourself and to the people around you. So remember, if you want to see lasting change in your life, keep on watching in the third person. I'll see you next week.